Grandmaster Tau Tau Haramanuba here on Unpopular Opinion, speaking of the three major school of thoughts that are found within the advocates of African traditional religion, which I did not get the opportunity to articulate them. Also, I'll use this opportunity because I know when we share some information, and then people will be wanting to know more, and you left it halfway. So, these three school of thoughts, we say one is the missionaries who were coming here to convert the Africans and who claiming that the religion that they are coming up with was within the African, but known by different name, which is the name they came up with. This is a first school of thought, which is made of the likes of Robert Moffat, Eugene Casalis, Ellen Berger, Edwin Smith, and so forth. And then you have the second school of thought, which is mainly African nationalist. These are people who are Africans: Jomo Kenyatta, Leopold Senghor, Dankwa, Busia, Stilwani, and Mbiti, among others, who are basically they take offense on people who attack the African culture. But they goes to the length to try to prove that Africa knew God, but this God was the same as the Christian God. So they dress up this African God with the Christian clothes. So they talk about the Christian past of Africa. They talk about the silent presence of Christ or Jesus in Africa. Their ultimate goal is to convert African traditional religion into Christianity. And therefore, SMBT did with his book, The African Concept of God, where he went on to collect about 300 names of the African divinities, and all of them collectively refer to them as God. So he's Christianizing the African divinities and dressing them up in Hellenic clothes and subjecting them to Greek metaphysics and casting them within the Greco-Roman concept of what God is. And then, of course, you have this third group that is claiming to be wanting to have the missionary conversation with animism, that they want to have a conversation with African spirituality, but they're referring to it as animism and polytheism. Now, in Africa, we don't have a religion called animism or a religion called polytheism. So that conversation they want to have is conversation with themselves, and also ultimately is to convert these Africans into this new age interpretation of Christianity, which is a continuous colonization of Africans through religion and using different avenues. That this time we can use the avenue of a dialogue. That is why dialogue with animism. Before it was a forced conversion. And then after the forced conversion, there was now self-conversion, where the African Christians strive to convert their fellow African Christians. This second school of thought is the one that came up with a thing called ATR, African Traditional Religion. They came up with African theology. Now, African theology and African traditional religion is just a Christian mindset functioning within the African spirituality space, where you have in the Christian mindset operating within the African spirituality space. So it is using African theology, is using so-called African traditional religion to justify Christianity in Africa and say this thing existed in Africa. So they have different branches that even when they branch out of Christianity, but they still take the Christian element. We talked about the Rastafari movement being one of those. We talk about even chematologists and Egyptologists. Now, also the difference between Egyptologists and chematologists, that chematologist is these black people who are into chemet, but Egyptologists is these white people who dig graves and desecrate sacred places, temples, grave robbers, thieves actually, who take this thing and put them in their museum. So the difference, and we are largely archaeologists and anthropologists, while the chematologists are themselves chematologists. These Africans who are philosophizing about Kimen, but still stuck up in Christian consciousness. Hence, they'll tell you about the Trinity of Egypt being Osiris, Isis, and Horus, who are basically Jehovah, Jesus, and Mary. So, or Joseph, Jesus, and Mary. So they are still coming up with searching for the Christian God in Africa using these traditions, spiritual traditions that existed in Africa long, long before Africa was Christianized and colonized. So as a result, these are the three school of thoughts, and all of them are a response, a reaction. They are reacting or responding to colonialism, and all of them, they are controlled by the forces that they are reacting to, which is colonialism. So colonialism is setting up the tone for them. Some are responding because they're angry at the missionaries of the 18th century and 19th century who came in and demonized Africa. So these are the three school of thought involved in so-called African religion, but we don't have a thing called African religion. We don't even have a word for religion. Not only the absence of the word, because I want us to be clear that we're not being semantic, that because you don't have the word religion, so therefore you did not have a religious practice. Religion consists of dogma, doctrine, scripture, place of worship, day of worship. So none of that existed in Africa. We did not have a specific place of going to worship God. We did not have a specific book. We did not have a specific day and say either Sunday, Saturday, or Friday. We never had that. So we did not have a religion in a true sense of what make religion religion, not in a semantic sense of we did not have the word religion, therefore we did not. So African traditional religion is a creation of the African Christians. It doesn't exist in Africa. It's like animism and polytheism. There is no such religion in Africa called animism or polytheism. It's a creation, and in a true sense of the practice and definition of that word, the same as ancestor worship. In a true sense of the practice, not semantics that we don't have the word called ancestor worship. We have Paba Dimu, we have Mpoyaba Dimu, we have Ukpahla. So therefore, these things don't mean ancestor worship. I mean, in a true sense, we don't have that. So we never had also a thing called African traditional religion. And to put the word Africa, religion and tradition in one word is an oxymoron. We don't have that. And it's a result of post-traumatic Christian disorder that these African Christians, who were mainly theologians and scholars, but theologians like John Mbiti, who were clergies in these European churches, they were suffering from this post-traumatic Christian disorder, and then it manifests in this form of dual consciousness, double consciousness, which make them double talk on everything. And one of the current manifestation of it is what is called the Christian Sangoma phenomena. Gamako. Thobela, thobela.